Hi, I'm Matt Chenard, Senior Waterfowl Programs Manager for Delta Waterfowl, here with our May Conditions Report. Here in the Dakotas, things have dried up considerably since last month. As you can see behind me, this wetland is where we filmed last month's conditions report, and it's pretty much dry now. That's the case across most of North Dakota. The seasonal wetlands are starting to dry up, and the semi-permanent, permanent wetlands are definitely lower than they were a month ago. But we've been catching some rains across North Dakota in different spots. We're having those thunderstorms that have brought good moisture to some areas, especially the southeastern part of the state's really wet right now. Same with South Dakota. The northeastern part of South Dakota is really wet. The rest of the state's kind of in that mode where there's some water, but not great in a lot of areas. So we could definitely use some more moisture over the next month or so for those re-nesting ducks and for the late nesting ducks. But we are starting to see some broods around, so things are happening here. For a report on how things are looking up in Canada, let's hear from Jim Fisher.
The Canadian prairies remain very dry. We've seen a lot of hot temperatures of late, 30 degrees Celsius, so that's 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which has caused even more evaporation of the existing water. With those hot temperatures, we've also seen thunderstorms, which have replenished some of the wetlands, but of course they're very spotty. So we're seeing some areas doing quite well and other areas even getting further into drought mode. Some of the wetlands are showing mud flats on the inside of the cattails, which doesn't bode well for duck production. So Alberta is probably about average, Saskatchewan below average overall, and Manitoba is about average at best. Eastern Canada fares much better. We're seeing wetlands full to the top throughout Ontario, around the Great Lakes, and into Quebec. And the further east you go into the maritime provinces, things are very wet with recent flooding around Fredericton and elsewhere. Over on the Labrador and Newfoundland, they just had snow last week, so things are very wet there and cold. And I think that snow in Newfoundland probably caused some damage for nesting birds. The other side note is that British Columbia is also experiencing much flooding in interior of BC. So that should bode well for production from BC.
Thanks, Jim. Well, elsewhere around the U.S. and Canada, in the Northeast, of course, they're getting lots of heavy rains there in areas. Too much rain, of course, in many areas, but conditions there are good for ducks, and we expect that we'll see some good production in the northeastern U.S. for those Atlantic flyway hunters. In the western U.S., it's much the same. They've been catching some good rainstorms here, and they've had kind of a cooler spring, so things are looking good for the western duck hunters as well. That's it for this month's conditions report. As you can see, it's kind of variable, but we're hopeful that we'll have good production for the fall flight and for duck hunters this fall.